Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where Hollywood, Warner Brothers Discovery no less, I can't believe it, you just gotta hang in there. And also, the quality of the product. We're going to talk about that a little bit, and I think it's worth noting that this product is coming from the prior administration, so to speak, at Warner Brothers. But anyway, they began to claw their way back with chocolate and movie stars. What a combination. Wonka, yes, Wonka debuts with 39 million. Now, I would have liked to have a 4 in front of this. I really would have. And it's so close. In fact, by the time the Monday actuals come in, it might be there. But this is also way better than the opening weekends for other recent musicals. Maybe they were right to hide the fact that it was a musical in the marketing campaign. For those of you who went, how did you feel about the surprise when everyone started singing? I mean, the movie hits the ground singing, which I actually thought was fun because it's such a fun opening. It's such a whimsical, heartfelt opening number. But I wonder, with no spoilers, what was that experience like for you? And also the trades are already declaring that the musical is back, baby, especially with how well Wonka is doing overseas. And again, this is not a very expensive movie, so it's looking pretty good. And it might be, the musical might indeed be back with the 1-2 punch that Warner Brothers has lined up. Kabam! With The Color Purple hitting theaters Christmas Day in just about a week, which from what I can see, I'm not sure what the ticket sales look like officially, in advance, but I've been looking at some of the theaters, and the tickets seem to be selling very well, particularly for Christmas Day. It's a lot of people's Christmas Day choice. And the reviews haven't even dropped yet. That's going to happen this Tuesday. I can't wait to talk to you about that movie. But back to Wonka. Yes, in spite of the crappy trailers that Warner Brothers released, in the end, the stars, not the movie stars, but, the stars in the cosmos, movie stars too, but the stars in the cosmos truly aligned for the studio. So the actors' strike ended, allowing Timothee Chalamet, who'd already booked Saturday Night Live quite cleverly, and then he was able to throw in some Wonka discussion because the strike ended right before his show aired, and Hugh Grant. Both those guys in particular have gotten a lot of attention for Wonka on social media. Sure, Grant has continued with his, let's say, mischievous streak, aggressively mischievous. But as P.T. Barnum used to say, there's no such thing as bad publicity. These days, I don't really think that holds up. But I think Grant seems to be mostly making fun of himself and the current state of his career. He's a little mean. He's a scooch mean. I don't love everything that comes out of his mouth, but some of it's pretty darn funny, and I think that makes it okay. Speaking of P.T. Barnum, many are thinking Wonka could be a sleeper hit like The Greatest Showman, which was extremely loosely based on the life of P.T. Barnum. In fact, it would have helped that movie not to be associated with P.T. Barnum because P.T. Barnum was pretty despicable. But The Greatest Showman ended up doing extremely well thanks to word of mouth and being one banger of a movie, and that only opened with around 9 million, and Wonka's at 39. So with the holiday season, I think Wonka could hold up, just like Greatest Showman did all the way through New Year's. And maybe even beyond, because there ain't no movies coming out. Although it's funny, one of the first movies of 2024 is another musical that's also a secret musical, Paramount's Mean Girls. But Wonka, as I said, could hold up all the way through New Year's, especially with the lack of competition. Although there are a lot of movies coming out. But I think Wonka is definitely up front. It's like a big movie. And I continue to feel that Wonka and The Color Purple will share the holiday space with Warner Brothers getting all the monies. The only real threat is Aquaman 2, which is also from Warner Brothers. We've been talking about how the audience has become fractured these days due to streaming, and not everybody is on the same page as they used to be. It used to be everybody watched the same movie, everybody watched the same show, because you didn't have a lot of choices. But now there's a lot of choices, and audiences have, I think, fractured, which has been one of the problems for DC. But I think that kudos are in order for Warner Brothers for saying, you know what, instead of bemoaning the current state of audiences, let's try to play into that. And they've created a theatrical release strategy for the 2023 holiday season that reflects fractured audiences. And they're like, we'll just gobble them all up by releasing a ridiculous number of movies in, the same window. So, no matter what your tastes are, the odds are pretty good that you will be seeing a Warner Brothers movie in the next 1 or 2 weeks. And that's impressive. Universal is like, I thought we were the only game changers in town. And Warner Brothers says, no, being on the verge of bankruptcy makes us bold. All right, so on that note, and hey, it's working, which is really amazing. Now, on that note, the next star to align is that Disney's Wish tanked. Usually, Disney Animation's Thanksgiving release plays all the way through New Year's, but with audiences clearly waiting to watch Wish on Disney Plus, it's a fun movie. It's not as bad as some people try to make it out to be. And I still say that Disney, they've already announced their releases for this week. Maybe it's a surprise. I don't think so. But Disney should have really released Wish on Disney Plus on Christmas Day as an option to watch at home because there are really no digital or streaming movie. Well, Netflix has some movies this week, but the home options are scarce. And Wish really could have, been like, hey, you want to stay home? Do your kids have nothing to do between Christmas and New Year's? Put on Wish. I think it could have done really well. I mean, it served Encanto quite well, 2 years ago, but it's not happening. Oh, what a missed opportunity. What would you have done with Wish? Anyway, it'll hit Disney Plus eventually, where I do think it will do pretty well. I love that song. This is the thanks I get. I saw some people bad-mouthing it on social media today, and it made me sad. Anyway, there's no obvious crowd pleaser for families to go to the multiplex, so enter Wonka and to some degree The Color Purple. I think Wonka will excel here, especially with the family audience, because The Color Purple, as those of you who are familiar with the story know, deals with some very adult subject matter in a tasteful, reserved way. So I think, the PG-13 rating for The Color Purple is appropriate, but I think for families with small children or under 13, Wonka is going to be the choice. So that'll really help Wonka. So Wonka's movie stars were able to promote the film, and they've got the all-ages market pretty much to themselves. Then the next star to align is that there's been a 2-week palate cleanser with no Hollywood releases. And this window also did some good because it allowed 2 Japanese movies to flourish. But also allowed Wonka for its debut weekend to be the only big new movie in theaters. You can see the difference in the box office itself because versus the top 10, it goes from 39 million at number 1, it drops down to 6 million for Hunger Games in second place. That's amazing. Usually, there's not such a steep drop between, the first 3 movies, give or take. So that's amazing. So Wonka, even though a lot of competition is coming, had this weekend pretty much to itself. And then, while their trailers might have been bad, so bad, Warner Brothers did a great job generating word of mouth. They screened the film super early for critics, partially because of awards voting, but I think also because they had that review embargo lift so early, and our reviews were ready to go. So mostly glowing reviews, followed by releasing the film a week early in Europe, where they loved Paddington. That led to positive social media chatter that has peaked at just the right time going into this weekend. And it's still, I think, growing, with everyone saying, you know what, this Wonka movie is actually pretty good. This is why social media embargoes and review embargoes exist, if you ever wonder about that, because they're carefully managed to build this kind of crescendo. Plus, while Wonka wasn't everywhere like Barbie was, Warner Brothers publicity did manage to get it on the periphery of everyone's POV with lots of product tie-ins. Some of them seemed kind of cheap to me, so I think it made Wonka not seem like the A-plus production that it is. No matter what you might think of the movie, you can't argue with the quality of the production. But at least people were aware of it. And then also TV crossover promotions. Finally, faith in talent. This is a big one that I'm sure some of you are happy to hear. I'm usually more business oriented, but you know what? I think the talent ended up being a good choice here. I questioned it in my review. Well, I said maybe a bigger star would have helped. And who knows? Maybe Hugh Jackman would have made it open even bigger. But kudos to Timothee Chalamet. He's building his career. He's still at the early stages. Not everybody gets to start off as Wolverine. That's a big plus. And Hugh Jackman hit some rough patch, more than one rough patch himself. Remember, what was that, Kate and Leopold? It wasn't always a bed of roses for Hugh Jackman. But Paul King might not have delivered huge box office with the Paddington movies, particularly domestic, but he delivered quality, especially as people, the Paddington movies came out a couple of years ago. So even if you didn't see them in theaters, a lot of people have caught them since on digital and streaming. So he delivered quality, and that led to goodwill with critics and audiences alike. So you add to that a huge IP like Roald Dahl's Wonka, and then some movie stars. This is or budding movie stars. This is Timothee Chalamet's second biggest opening ever. What was the first one? It was Dune, also for Warner Brothers. Oh, he's a Warner Brothers guy. And I did finally check out the new Dune trailer after so many of you said it was so good. And I have to say, it was spectacular. Although I wonder if it might already be too late for, once an image is captured around a movie, it's tough to break it. Although it looks like they're breaking it on Wonka, so maybe they'll break it on Dune, because that last trailer was really good. Warner Brothers had faith with Wonka that the resulting confection would taste just right, and it is scrumptious. I mean, one of the biggest complaints about Hollywood these days is lack of quality, and here comes Warner Brothers with not one but two stellar musicals. I haven't seen Aquaman 2 yet, so maybe it's great too, maybe, let's see. Will Wonka hold? That's the next big question. It has exceptional audience scores. Its RT audience score is even better than its cinema score. Cinema score, I wish it had been an A. Both Paddington movies were A's. But, this is a bigger audience than the Paddington movie had, so maybe, they're not all Paul King fans. He got dinged with the minus sign. And most schools haven't let out yet, right? Which could give the film a second wind when they do over the course of the next week. The movie has skewed a bit more Caucasian, which is interesting because you have Keegan-Michael Key, Calla Lane, and Patterson Joseph, although only the first person there is a named talent, at least in the North American box office, although Patterson Joseph is so good in the movie. But they're in very big roles. And then Natasha Rothwell also has a supporting role in the film. And surely when The Color Purple opens, that will siphon away some of that audience from Wonka. But it's a long holiday season. You can see both movies, which I highly recommend that you do. But hopefully, so over the next 2 weeks, good word of mouth and lots of free time during the holiday season might broaden Wonka's appeal. I hope there's broad appeal for The Color Purple too. I think all audiences should check out that movie. And Wonka doesn't need premium screens. That's a real benefit for the film because they only accounted, even though it had all the premium screens to itself this weekend because it was the only game in town, the new game in town, it still only accounted for 35% of its opening weekend. So as Wonka loses all the IMAX screens to Aquaman 2 and a lot of the Dolby showtimes to Ferrari, to The Color Purple, to Migration, but it'll still play like 1 or 2 showtimes in the afternoon, it'll be fine because people are happy to see it on any screen. So that's fantastic news for Wonka. So there are so many movies coming up. What movie are you planning to see over the holiday span? And for those of you who celebrate, what's your Christmas Day movie? I know this really surprises a lot of you overseas, but here in North America, Christmas Day is a huge day for going to the movies. Lots of box office will be generated. All right, before we get to the rest of the top 10, remember, both American Fiction and Zone of Interest opened in limited release this weekend. Unfortunately, though, neither one generated headline-worthy per theater averages. American Fiction is going wide this coming weekend, so we'll see if that helps at all. But this might undercut their awards prospects because everyone likes a movie with a little heat on it. On that note, Poor Things managed to break into the top 10 this weekend as it added only 73 theaters. And while the box office might have cooled a little bit in just a week, the conversation about the movie is red hot, especially with lots of fans still unable to see the film. They're like, we gotta see this thing. There is intense debate about the film on social media. As one thing is clear, there is no middle ground. You either love it or you hate it. I, unfortunately, am in the hate it camp. But what's interesting is that the people who love it so aggressively that people who hate it tend to just walk away, fade into the background. They're like, enjoy it, everybody, but we hate it. So it's still keeping the conversation largely positive. In fact, with reports of some people literally walking away from the film, walking out of screenings, that's only piquing the curiosity factor for many. Although, you never know. Poor Things is huge on social media, as have been some other films where the box office just failed to materialize. I mean, look at Poor Things. It's only at 2.2 million. I mean, that is very low. I think it would have maybe been a little bit better this weekend because it did add 73 screens. And its per theater average dropped significantly. And also, I would say that I think that some of the discourse has poked enough holes in the film's at first sterling reputation that while I continue to see a lot of nominations in the film's future, I'm thinking it's a little less locked for wins. I think it might be a bit too much in the end, and I think some of the points and strikes against it have validity. So I think at the end of the day, especially in today's climate, I don't know if it's a film that Hollywood wants to officially celebrate. It might just be celebrated with good reviews, film Twitter loving it, and, probably maybe doing well on streaming and digital down the line. I mean, it's certainly a sign of Emma Stone's undeniable star power, although what makes them a star, is the dependability of their product. Audiences can trust that their movies will be a certain way. So Stone might have made it harder for some audiences to trust her judgment going forward, although at the same time, she might have won over new fans. So if her goal is to remake herself from a Sandra Bullock to a Cate Blanchett, I think she's succeeding. And by the way, both Blanchett and Bullock have, very different, one of them is a big box office draw, one of them isn't, but they still have amazing careers. Emma Stone might feel she had her blockbuster time, and now she wants to be, a Cate Blanchett, which is interesting because I feel like Tar and Poor Things are kind of cut from the same cloth. But the difference being that, Poor Things, as I said, really is NC-17. And Poor Things has elevated director Yorgos Lanthimos from fringe talent to mainstream artiste. I'm not saying the mainstream goes to see his movies, but they now know who he is, along the lines of Ari Aster and Alex Garland, and, a darling of film Twitter. None of these filmmakers generate any real box office, at least not yet. We'll see how Alex Garland's Civil War does. It's his most commercial film, I think, to date. But, however, as long as they keep their budgets down, they're able to generate tons of media and awards attention, which is valuable in and of itself, and very valuable to stars who want those awards, or at least nominations. And so, I think Lanthimos is already shaping up his next film, and he has an all-star cast. I wonder if they saw Poor Things to know what they were... Well, the people who did Poor Things knew what they were getting into. I'm very surprised in Mark Ruffalo. But really, what career does Mark Ruffalo have? He might as well have some fun. Only question box office-wise, as I said, is has Poor Things already peaked, again, box office-wise? It's just a 2.2. For all the talk about it, it's only made 2.2 million. That's a little shocking. And I think with the intense subject matter, can it really get higher than, say, 20 million? And that's me being optimistic, domestic. I would say what would have to happen is that it would have to start winning a lot of the major awards. Like with the Golden Globes and the Critics' Choice Awards right after New Year's, that could happen. So maybe that's why they're waiting to make it wide, before they want to have some wins under their belt. I see the movie doing, to be honest with you, better on digital and especially streaming, where younger fans can, let's say, secretly watch it, because it is rated R, and viewers looking for a more, let's say, chaste experience can fast forward some aspects of the film, yet still see what everyone's talking about. So I think that's where the movie could potentially really shine. And it might never get a chance to shine, from like a business perspective, at the box office, on streaming numbers, but it's clearly a darling of, the cinephile community. And there is value in that. Okay, the overall top 10. The Hunger Games prequel is at about 300 million worldwide. And with its lower budget, and again, considering how many other big movies out right now would kill for that total, like they're nowhere near it. They're not even at 200 million. It's looking pretty good for the franchise, particularly Rachel Zegler, who did not kill this movie. And after the Marvels, that's important. Although for Brie Larson, she did get a bit of a reprieve thanks to all the noms for her Apple TV show, Lessons in Chemistry. So I don't know if she'll make any more big movies. I don't know what Marvel's going to do with that group of characters. But Brie Larson herself will be able to continue to work. Maybe she should call up Yorgos Lanthimos or any of those three dudes. All right, The Boy and the Heron, because, I think that group likes Brie Larson. If the film Twitter cinephile group likes her. So I think that could be a safe space for her. Rebuild her career back up. She got on Marvel's radar for Room in the first place. All right, so The Boy and the Heron suffered a surprisingly big drop in its second weekend, which might mean it's not a lock to win Best Animated Feature, as some thought that it might be after its strong opening weekend. So that means the race is still open for other contenders to have a shot at the Golden Globe and Critics' Choice Awards that are coming up as they continue to shape the field. Still some nominations to go, particularly the Oscars. That doesn't happen until the end of January. But Godzilla Minus One is still holding up with just a 43% drop in its third weekend. The movie is at about 60 million worldwide. But if you factor in the low budget, well, we'll definitely be hearing from director Takashi Yamazaki again, speaking of directors who are making a name for themselves. Trolls 3 and Wish are still locked in a death spiral, with Trolls 3 kind of the winner in a battle that has no real winners. Both films are underperforming. And Universal is about to throw another animated movie out there with Migration this Friday from their Illumination division. Trolls 3 is from DreamWorks. Like Disney has Disney Animation and Pixar, Universal also has two animation houses, DreamWorks and Illumination. I think if Universal had known Trolls 3 was going to underperform like this, with a lot of audiences clearly waiting for it to hit digital and Peacock, which it should do very soon. I hope it would be horrible for Trolls 3 to hit digital in the next week or so, because that would really hurt Migration. So we'll see what Universal decides to do. They like to have surprise digital releases. I try to find out what's hitting digital, but sometimes they don't tell you. They just go, surprise movie. And I think that surprise launch is effective, because you're like, wow, I can watch what right now at home? But why do that to your own movie, Trolls 3? So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I would have held Migration until 2024, especially the first quarter, where there are no movies thanks to the strikes. It is dead, particularly in January and February. I mean, Migration isn't a contender for Best Animated Feature, so there's no rush to release it before the end of the year. And birds already migrated a few months ago, so it's not like it's topical. Fathom made a little pocket change with the latest Chosen movie, this time a holiday event, but this is actually pretty low for the Chosen franchise, and one has to wonder what the heck happened. Has the Chosen franchise perhaps expanded? Has it reached its tipping point, beyond its audience? And then also, has Angel Studios started to eat into that market? Although their own new movie, The Shift, is already out of the top 10, which, as you can see, it doesn't take much to make this top 10 in only its third weekend, so it did not last. Napoleon, wow, what a box office dud. But hey, Ridley Scott, that guy just keeps on chugging along. He just signed a new deal, and he does have Gladiator 2 coming up. So that's kind of like his safety net. I mean, I think it's almost impossible to mess up Gladiator 2, although I think Ridley could do it. All right, I mean, we're all excited about that, though. I mean, and I think Gladiator 2. I don't know, though. I mean, it's hard to guess these days because of how much viewing habits have changed. We got to see that trailer. Finally, poor Beyonce. Her Renaissance movie suffered yet another huge drop in its third weekend, falling 63%. Ouch, it did not level off. And it won't make it to 40 million domestic at this point. I mean, it might not even make it to 35, maybe 35, but it's weak. Some of you have pointed out, and I think this is actually very accurate, that Beyonce's audience is now older, and so perhaps Renaissance would have been able to make a bigger splash if it had been a streaming release. Something other performers should think about when they decide what their release strategy should be for their concert movies going forward. I wouldn't be negative on the concert movie, but I think you don't just blindly follow in Taylor Swift's footsteps. Think about what's right for your fandom. And so maybe that would have served Beyonce a little bit better. It's a shame. I love Beyonce. I don't like seeing her take a hit like that. All right, so let's head over to streaming, starting with Nielsen per usual for mid-November, right before Thanksgiving. People might love to complain about The Crown these days, but with part 1 of the final season, the Diana episodes, there they are at number 1, although it is worth noting it's a soft number 1. Nothing here is over 1,000, which is weak. That's weak. Usually the top 2 and 3 should be above 1,000. In fact, these numbers are so low that The Killer in its second week was able to pop into the overall chart, even though it didn't experience a surge in viewership. And a lot of acquired shows on the overall chart, as people look to the past with the slowdown of new content at this time, thanks to the strikes. And again, it's not going to get any better for a little bit. I mean, there are a lot of movies coming out for the holiday because everyone held their movie for Christmas. But again, nobody really, would a movie have done well over the 2-week break? Maybe they should have released The Boys in the Boat there. But anyway, for like January and February, it's pretty dead, both in theaters and on streaming. I think things will pick up a little bit in March, especially because that's when spring break is. So on the originals chart, Loki has fallen back off the overall chart, only on there for like a week. It's still in third place here on the originals chart thanks to people binging season 2 the week after it wrapped. That's great news, very badly needed for Loki, because when season 2 first wrapped, it seemed viewership was down about 35% from season 1. But maybe people just waited to binge. And speaking of controversial, many of you were like, do not Google Matt Rife, but yet his comedy special made it onto the Nielsen charts. I guess this is one of those tests of whether or not there's anything such as bad publicity. Although I think that the Matt Rife discourse didn't really go beyond, like some pockets of social media. So I think definitely there are some producers who they'll be able to, I think Matt Rife's management team will be able to be like, don't Google him, just look at the numbers. And he might be able to get some stuff off of that. And look, I don't know why they don't Google in Hollywood, but they don't like to Google in Hollywood. And look, there's Invincible, another win for Prime Video, as they're starting to make some real inroads in original content. That's why they're raising their prices as they stick ads on the service. You got to pay like an extra $3 in 2024 if you don't want to watch ads. Maybe the ads are good. Peacock has good ads. And I'm very excited to see how The Boys Season 4 performs, as well as Fallout. I think Prime Video is set to only do better in 2024. Then with movies, on the movies chart, this was the week Blue Beetle finally hit Max, and it did okay. I think DC is really dying with a whimper. We'll see what happens with Aquaman 2. It's going to be interesting at the very least. And not only is Elemental still on here, but Moana popped back on. Woo! Big sigh of relief for Lin-Manuel Miranda. He's still in it. Over on Netflix's charts for just last week, Leave the World Behind, produced by the Obamas, is a solid to strong #1. So it's good that they're doing very well on Netflix, while Harry and Meghan have not. Because, these are kind of like, very interesting producer deals for the streaming service they decided to do, like celebrity producing deals, where you have strong talent behind the camera that you usually would expect to be on camera. Although Harry and Meghan were in their own documentary, and that's the best thing that they were able to do for Netflix. While Family Switch and Leo continues to be some of you might be like, what else did the Obamas produce? Well, they produced a very strong nature documentary and a popular children's show for Netflix, so their content's doing well on the service. Again, Family Switch and Leo continue to be family holiday favorites. Also, Super Mario Brothers, it got a big boost in its second week on the service, although clearly most people already watched and or bought it on digital and have been streaming it on Peacock. And Netflix continues to do well with original Christmas movies, taking a page from Hallmark's playbook. With shows, Obliterated is a super soft #1 in its second week. It was a runner-up last week, now it's at #1. Although it's enough to score season 2 for the show, some of you might be scratching your head as to why Obliterated got renewed and some of your favorites have not. Well, Obliterated, obviously it's a comedy, it's a little less expensive, but here's the kicker, it's from the creators of Cobra Kai. So Netflix not only has faith in them to build an audience, and it's a soft #1, but still #1, but also I think Netflix wants to maintain a relationship with them, and I think it's worth the price of a season 2. It's not necessarily going to get a season 3, but Netflix feels it's worth a couple $1 million to keep them at the streamer. And a couple of shows are holding up, but again, as I said, these numbers are overall pretty weak. Over on iTunes, Taylor Swift, whose movie dropped for rental only on Wednesday, her birthday, is still #1, although many fans were frustrated that they couldn't buy the film. They want to own that baby. Like when you rent it, you got 48 hours to watch it, and then if you want to keep watching it, I guess you have to buy it again. Did any of you buy it more than once? I think that she's waiting for a sweet streaming deal, and she's going to tell everybody that nobody owns the film, so everybody is going to want to keep watching it. But I don't know. I think not having it available for purchase seems like a little bit of an anti-fan decision, and it's unusual for Taylor Swift to do that. How do you feel if you're a Swiftie? Do you feel betrayed, or can your Swiftie queen do no wrong? Killers of the Flower Moon is still going strong, I think because, again, you can add as many intermissions as you like, as they said themselves, as are holiday films, particularly both Grinches. I love those two. The Creator just became available to rent and is doing well, although it is going to hit Hulu at no extra cost this Wednesday. Oppenheimer and Priscilla, which just dropped, are also strong, while Barbie has dropped to #10, but that's because it just hit Max, where it has aggressively taken over the front page. This is nothing. If you looked at Max on Friday or Saturday, it was nuts. And with good reason, as it is the #1 movie on the service. I'm excited to see what those Nielsen numbers are in a couple of weeks. So slow, Nielsen. As for this coming weekend, it is, as I said, a huge holiday weekend with Christmas on Sunday, Monday, creating a 4-day weekend. Oh, it's going to be amazing. Please note, for the next 2 weeks, Movie Math will be on Tuesday, the day after Christmas Day and New Year's Day, so I can cover that sweet, sweet holiday box office. On Friday, December 22nd, Aquaman 2, The Iron Claw. I'll be reviewing The Iron Claw this week. It's super sad. Wouldn't watch it before Christmas if I were you, but I definitely watch it between Christmas and New Year's. Anyone But You and Migration all hit theaters, while All of Us Strangers gets a limited release. Then on Christmas Day, which is Monday, The Color Purple, the truly awful Ferrari. I would advise you to avoid that movie. Yeah, wow, yikes. It's got like 3 good scenes in it. But anyway, so The Color Purple, Ferrari, and The Boys in the Boat, which I loved, also open. Again, what is your Christmas Day movie? Some very, very strong choices here. Very good. I guess the ones that I would recommend, and I still have yet to see Aquaman 2, but right now I would go with Wonka, The Color Purple, or The Boys in the Boat. But those 3 are what I recommend for Christmas Day if you haven't decided. All right, so what are your recommendations? All right, so as for streaming movies, Netflix has Maestro on Wednesday. Didn't love that movie, as you know from my review, but I do think it has some redeeming qualities, and it's very visually striking. And then Rebel Moon, which I also reviewed, hits on Friday. Netflix also has not 1 but 2 comedy specials over the next week. Trevor Noah, which hits on Tuesday, and Ricky Gervais on Christmas Day. What a scamp. As for series, this is where Disney is hoping to shine. So, maybe that's why they didn't put Wish here, because it's a busy week for them, and they're the only one really putting out new shows this week. Percy Jackson starts with 2 episodes on Wednesday, while Marvel's What If kicks off 9 daily episodes, the 9 days of Marvel's Christmas, starting Friday, including 1 holiday-themed episode that drops on early on Christmas Eve. But you can watch it Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. And that's this week's Movie Math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And how do you think the holiday box office and streaming space are shaping up? Love to hear what your plans are down below. And of course, subscribe. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.